We're so thrilled to have you all here for our webinar today, Proving It Works, Montclair State's Data-Driven Case for Mentorship at Scale. All right, so some housekeeping tips just as we are getting going here. This webinar is being recorded and we'll send you the recording in a follow-up email. On the screen, you'll see a few tips to ensure you have a smooth virtual experience with us today. We suggest adjusting your video layout to speaker view. This allows you to see the slide deck and also the speaker at the same time. We'd also love to hear where you're calling in from. If you could drop your name and organization, location in the chat, that would be awesome just to see where everyone here is coming from. Throughout the session, you can also use that chat or the Q&A feature to ask questions or comments. Both of those are turned on, and we'll have space at the end of the session today for questions as well. We also love energy here at Mentor Collective. We encourage you to use the reactions feature to keep the energy up throughout the session. If you like what you hear, if something really resonates with you, let us know. Use those emojis. We love it. All right, so our wonderful panelists today are Leslie Wilson. Leslie serves as Associate Dean for the College of Humanities and Social Sciences at Montclair State University. Leslie holds a BA and MPS from Cornell University and an MA from Hunter College and a PhD from the CUNY Graduate School. We're so honored to have you here with us today, Leslie. We can't wait to dive into Montclair's story with you. We're also joined by Courtney Cunningham, who is Assistant Dean for Student Services in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. Courtney leads the Student Success Center there, and she oversees student engagement programming and strategic retention initiatives, which you'll hear more about in just a second. Courtney previously served as the Director of Academic Advising in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, and she holds a BA in Political Science from Drew University and an MAT from Montclair. Thank you so much, Courtney. We're thrilled to hear more of Montclair's story from you as well in just a few secs. And then Erin Callison from Mentor Collective will be moderating today's session. Erin is an account executive here. She's backed by 12 or more years of experience building student mentorship programming in Philadelphia and beyond. Erin works alongside university leaders like Leslie and Courtney to design transformative, relationship-driven strategies that really help every student thrive. Erin has a master's in teaching. She has deep roots in experiential learning, and she brings truly an interactive approach and practical program design expertise in guiding today's conversation. So, very excited to hear from all of you. Let's go ahead and dive right in. So, as we are moving along here, we have a quick poll to guide today's conversation. We want to hear directly from you. We know that every institution is at different stages in the journey, and so we want to take a second to hear what your strategic priorities might be. So you'll see in on your screen, you should see a poll question that pops up asking what your biggest strategic focus is right now. You can select up to three of those. Maybe it's launching a mentorship program from the beginning, expanding it, maybe scaling efficiently, increasing engagement. That's always a big one. Measuring impact. Maybe it's using AI or technology for mentorship or something else, and you're free to drop something in the comments or in that text box in the poll if there's something else on your mind. I'm seeing a lot of good stuff here. A lot of increased student engagement and scale, pretty evenly split there. Measuring program impact. And I have two folks just finishing up. Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, so it looks like scaling, engagement, and measuring program impact are the biggest. So this is a great conversation for you to listen into. All right.
All
So with
right.
that, yeah, I'll turn it over to you, Erin. Here we go.
All right, great. Thanks, Jen. I am super excited to talk with Courtney and Leslie today. And to hear their story, we're going to go over a few key areas, and we'll talk first a little bit more context about the program, how it works, and who they're targeting. Then we'll dive into the impact. We'll talk about their retention analysis and some of the work that they've been up to. And then we'll focus on how they achieved it. So, specifically, how they targeted key student populations like Pell eligible and first generation students. And then finally, for really the second half of our time together, we'll talk about the broader ripple effect of mentorship, like building a sense of belonging and scaling their program. And we'll wrap up with talking about what's next for their initiative. And we'll take time at the end for Q&A if we can. If not, feel free to drop it in the chat and Jen will answer as we go. All right. So without further ado, let's talk about Montclair. Before we dive into specific questions, Courtney, could you tell us a little bit more about CHSS's mentoring initiative? Take us back to the beginning. What was the challenge you all were hoping to solve, and why did you choose mentorship to help solve it?
Sure. So this goes back about 8 years ago. And I think we were trying to figure out a few things. I mean, we're always looking, I think everyone in higher ed, we're always looking to improve retention and graduation rates, right? But we also have a very big commuter population at Montclair State. We have a very big first gen population at Montclair State. So we were looking for ways for students to connect that maybe wouldn't have to have them commit to a big gap of time.
Hmm.
Um, so I think looking at all those three things, our dean at the time thought, having a mentoring option would be great for our population. So that's really kind of how it started. And Leslie, do you want to add anything to that? Because I know you were involved more in those conversations 8 years ago than I was.
Sure. I think at the time, one of the things was that the college's data was lagging behind the university's data. And it was a critical period for the college because our graduation rates were behind the university's rates and our retention rates were behind the university's rates. And it was hoped that this would help us do two things. One, it would help us with our first year retention rates, and hopefully it would spill over and address our third year retention rates. And that if that happened with a small cohort, that we could expand it over time and address it for the whole college.
Thanks, Leslie. And you mentioned expanding over time. So we'll talk a little bit more about that today, but I'm curious when it comes to participation, how did you initially target those specific groups you mentioned?
So we started with an idea of scale, thinking about maybe 200 or 250 students out of the first year class. And we also thought we would target students within certain GPA ranges and students who were commuters as opposed to residential students, as Courtney mentioned before. And so we started discussing it. And I think it's important at the time period that we mentioned that Courtney was the sole advisor in our college and I was the assistant to the dean. So it was very different. The dean's office was starting to take shape. We had a brand new dean, and these were his ideas about how to address the problem.
Thanks. And I appreciate you sharing just, the resources that you were working with at the time. I think that helps us put ourselves in your shoes. So want to talk a little bit about some of those retention impact. We titled this webinar Proving What Works for a reason. So before we go any further, I know that that's many, like I said, many of the reason many folks joined today. Most institutions know mentorship is a high impact practice. It sounds like your dean probably had similar suspicions of thinking this, might help solve our challenges. And we know it works. We also know that it supports a sense of belonging and helps build community and is a low lift, like you mentioned, Courtney, way for students to participate and ultimately to impact their persistence. But very few institutions are actually able to prove it. So you all have seen some great impact and you've done a lot of the work, the heavy lifting this year, seeing mentees having a boost of 4 to 7% in year one retention compared to non-mentored students. That's an incredible result, and congratulations to you and the team. To walk us through, how were you able to prove this impact, and what did that process look like behind the scenes?
Sure. So, one of the benefits of having a new dean, again, is having to prove that what you're doing is working, right? So, what we did was we worked with our participant data that you guys have in a very nice dashboard for us, and we were able to export that and give it to our IR team. And we worked really closely with them, and they were able to make us a dashboard of, all the, let's say, because we use first years. So all of the first years, and then we could break them down by participants and non-participants. And then we were pretty easily able to filter, based on certain things like retention. And we could also kind of dig in a little bit more because then once we did one thing, we were like, oh, but then we can do this and that, like filter for certain cohorts, like are they first gen? Are they commuters? Race, ethnicity, high school GPA. We kind of really started playing around with a lot of different things because, once we had the dashboard, it was really nice.
That's great. And one thing I love about your approach is that it's evergreen. So I imagine you can keep going back to it. I know some institutions kind of do it all in Excel, and then it's really, it's something that lives as a lovely fixation of what happened in the past, but doesn't really live on in the future. And so what I love about that is really that you're able to probably plug in numbers in year after year and see that impact. So that's really exciting. You mentioned some of those target populations already. So we've talked broadly about outcomes, but I want to zoom in on equity. Pell eligible and first gen mentored students participate and retain at much higher rates within your program, with as much as a 10% lead for fall to fall retention. Leslie, you mentioned early on that you were looking to solve some challenges related to retention. Could you walk us through, was that intentional? And how did you kind of learn that over time?
So yes, it was intentional. Um, and what we started to recognize was that as we were able, as Courtney said, to break out those different groups, we were able to see these changes. And then we were able to concentrate more on who we wanted to be in the program and how to see if we could attract those students to be in the program and how to get mentors to work with those students. So I think that's the key part as well, is that a lot of our mentors were also Pell eligible and first gen. And so our students could identify with the mentors because the mentors were just like them.
Oh, that's super helpful to hear. And I think your comment on like it's not just who you target as mentees, but also who you target as mentors is really helpful. Because I know you all have also seen great results for mentor graduation rates and mentor persistence as well. Are there other ways that, you mentioned that it helped you concentrate? Have there been specific strategies that you've used to help focus in on those populations?
Yes, so what we found the most helpful is targeting students at orientation. Now, I know orientation sometimes tends to be a catch-all and it's overwhelming and they have so much going on. But what we do in our academic connection session of orientation, we get about an hour with them and we put this at the first 10 minutes and we say, listen, this is what this program is. This is what it offers you. And up until we'll get to this a little bit later, it's been an opt-in rate. So if they didn't sign up, they weren't going to get matched. They weren't going to get a mentor. We are switching that this year, but we'll talk about that a little later. But at that point, we would explain why it would be beneficial to them. And I think that those first gen students, it really hit home with them. Because maybe they don't have that infrastructure that other students had at home where it's like, oh, well, my mom or dad went here and my sister goes here and I know all these people in college. Like, I don't really know if I need a peer mentor. Whereas I think some other students that really, struck a chord with them and they were like, oh, wow, like I can have someone to just bounce ideas off of. I can ask them maybe where to eat, where to park, where to get my books, just little tips and tricks that maybe you don't want to ask an administrator on campus on your first day. So I think that is really why that population tend to engage a little bit more. And so it was a really nice bonus, intentional, but also a good bonus that it tended to resonate with them a little bit more.
That's great. I'm really glad you mentioned orientation because you're right. It goes fast. It's hard to find the time, but it sounds like for you all, and maybe you can speak to this, you've seen a much higher participation rates because you incorporated into this really built-in part of the student experience. And you're also seeing that the students that you're interested in targeting are signing up at that opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great. And one note, we do a lot of work at Mentor Collective. We'll talk about this later about a culture of mentorship. We see that our partners that incorporate mentorship into orientation or an opportunity to participate in mentorship as a part of orientation are really seeing that culture of mentorship thrive on campus, and it's a great strategy. So thanks for mentioning that. All right, we are going to move on to the next slide here. And we all know numbers are only part of the story. So qualitative data is just as critical when you're building a narrative for campus leaders and showing that impact. Leslie, I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more about maybe some of those special mentorship stories or moments that have stuck out over your tenure.
Um, I have a good story, but I know Courtney has one too, so I'll tell my story.
Okay.
Um, we have one mentor who I think was exceptional. She was an older student. She came to Montclair. She said that she didn't know anyone. And she was really excited to be a mentor because she felt that this was great, largely because this could do for others what she felt the university hadn't done for her. And she was a mentor for her junior year and her senior year. And then she started the graduate program at Montclair in her discipline. And she still wanted to be a mentor. And so for her 2 years of graduate school, she was a mentor as well. And that really touched me that she basically gave 4 years to the program. But I'll let Courtney tell her story because I know that's a really important story as well.
I love all the stories and just the feedback that we get at the end of the year, is just they're just things that stick with you. Not that numbers aren't fun, but sometimes it's really nice hearing the stories. My favorite one has to be we had a senior psych major paired with a freshman psych major, and started off just regular, check-ins once a week. How you doing? How's the adjustment? This and that. By the end of the semester, they were calling themselves friends. And then, by the end of, the spring semester, end of the year, they were, having lunch once a week. And then 3 years later, when the freshman was a senior and graduated, the mentor was pursuing her PhD in Colorado, flew back
Oh
to
my
attend
gosh.
the graduation ceremony here at Montclair. And they said, they came, they saw us, and they just said, we would have never even met if it wasn't for this program. And they were just so appreciative and thankful. So that's one of my favorite stories.
Oh, that's so great. Thank you for sharing that with us today. And I think that's a really great segue because we are going to talk about community and belonging here in a second. There's the one-on-ones, but then there's also, from what you've told us, mentorship is really woven into the fabric of your college. There are in-person events and connections across majors, like you mentioned, and with upperclassmen. What role do those broader touch points play in breaking down barriers for students, especially, you mentioned commuter students early on. So I'm curious how you kind of weave this into the daily life of a commuter student.
Yeah, so we try to provide opportunities for them to meet up, for them to connect. We have a small conference room here where we'll say, hey, you or your mentor, you want to come by? Do you want to have a snack? We'll have the common hours this week. Come by, stop in for 5 minutes, stay for an hour, do things like that. Again, very low pressure, low stakes, and include food. That tends to, always be a hit. And again, we understand our students are busy. Most of them work. Sometimes a lot of them work more than one job, and they're going to school full time. So just providing them that opportunity to say, hey, we're doing this all these times, common hour, 2 to 3 on Wednesdays throughout the semester, it just gives them that option to say, hey, oh, if I'm here, do you want to stop by? Do you want to just, grab a snack, like a walk and talk? We'll walk between classes, things like that.
I love that. I like the idea that it's, there's a mobility aspect to the mentorship, that it's not just, come here and get mentorship, but we can really make it across campus. Leslie, anything you would add here?
So I think that one of the great things about this is that technology plays a role. Students can chat by phone, they can chat by computer, they can chat on those social media. And if they want to do more, they can, right? They can
Mhm.
come to campus and talk with each other. They can have lunch with each other. They can sit in the parking lot in their cars and talk. They can do a lot of different things. And I think that that breaks up the isolation that students have. I think that the wonderfulness about the program is that it's manageable and it's controllable. And I say that because it's flexible on so many different levels. It's a different type of mentorship program that most of us experienced when we were in college, where you had to meet with your mentor so many hours of the week, of the day, of the month, and you had to sort of report in. This is sort of like a friendship, and it's a friendship with a purpose. And so you grow from that, and you, as a student, direct where you want to go.
Thank you, Leslie. I appreciate all the ways that you're talking about how this really feeds into a student's sense of belonging. And I feel like sense of belonging in the last few years has really become quite the buzzword. But I am curious, as you think about that those community aspects and the sense of belonging that you're creating, how are you all measuring that? How do you know that it's working?
I think that's tough. I think that's one of the hardest things to measure. And if anyone out there has a good way to measure it, I'm all ears. But I think one of the things that really helps us is having the platform that tracks the conversations and the text messages, because we can have an idea or an inkling, or, oh, someone says they're talking to upperclassmen, but this is the actual data saying, hey, this person talked to their mentees 6 times throughout the semester, and these were the check-in points. And this is like the topic they talked about. Like, that's huge. So if we're looking at retention or persistence and graduation rates, like, we can easily say, look, this person was engaged and maybe they dropped off.
Mm.
Or wow, this person, they signed up, but they never engaged. They never, connected with their mentor. So I think that really is another very actionable data point that we can use however we deem appropriate to try to maybe re-engage that student, or to say, hey, like, if you're getting X number of touch points, this can lead to, XYZ, these outcomes.
Yeah, that's super helpful to hear. And it sounds like what you're able to do is to say, using Mentor Collective, okay, great, those that are matched and connecting, that's awesome. Who is maybe struggling to connect, and thinking about
Right.
what are the other ways you can support them with kind of those community and sense of belonging in engagements as well. So that's super helpful to hear. And I know for other campuses, definitely something they're thinking about on commuter campuses. I see a lot in the chat that we've definitely got several commuter campuses here today.
Hmm.
All right. So we talked a little bit about culture of mentorship earlier, but I am curious, what are you finding around culture of mentorship at your institution? How has it helped you kind of increase mentorship buy-in across campus? And what are kind of those long downstream effects, Leslie? I mean, like you mentioned, this has been going on almost a decade, and so would love to hear some of those downstream effects from the culture of mentorship you're building.
I think that the most amazing part of this is that um, a lot of students hear about Mentor Collective and CHSS, and they want to be a part of it, but they're not in our college.
Yes.
And students will say like, "Oh, well, how can I be a part of this?" And we're like, "This is only for CHSS." And they'll be like, "But no, this should be for me too. I go to Montclair State." So that's how you know initially that it's working, but it's working in other ways as well. The relationships that students develop in this first year are being maintained after the program is over. The other way that you know it's really working is that most of our mentees want to be mentors. They want to be mentors the second that they become sophomores. and they stay mentors until they graduate. And so we are creating a community um, that is dynamic on a lot of different levels. And it's also helpful because it's creating a community within majors and outside of majors. So students are gravitating towards each other because, oh, you're my mentor and you're in my major. Can you help me out? But it's also, you're my mentor and you're not in my major. Now you're my friend, but tell me about your major because I'm really interested. Maybe I want to minor in that. So I think that it's helping the college grow and it's
Mm.
helping our students grow at the same time.
That's a great plug for there's also like an academic component here, right? Is that it's not just building community, but we're also seeing students discover more about what's within the college than maybe they previously could if they just came in as a psych major and were like, I'm here for psych and psychics alone. So that's super helpful to hear. Courtney, anything you would add on the student facing side?
I think, word of mouth goes a long way with students. And when they say, oh, I'm in this mentor program, or where you really hear it is when they become a mentee. No, a mentor, sorry. They're a
Yes.
mentee and then they're a mentor. When they become a mentor and then they tell their friends, oh yeah, I was in the program and then now I'm a mentor. And then you get their friends coming and saying like, oh, can I do this? Can I sign up?
Mhm.
This is a great way to get involved and not necessarily have to commit to a weekly 2 hour block. You can do it on your own time, in whatever, communication format that works for you and your mentee. So I think that's something that has really helped us in the past few years.
Yeah, I love how much you all emphasize like this can work for you in whatever way it needs to. And that's whether it's a friend or academic support or for commuter students, parking is such a big part of that. And so where are you going to park and what time do you need to be there? And I
Mhm.
think that's really a really beautiful part of your program. We can move to the next slide. So we're going to focus on infrastructure here for a couple of minutes and looking at the Montclair program with almost 7,000 texts per year, 68 flags routed to financial aid and academic support offices, and hundreds of matches. There's a lot of behind the scenes coordination. If you all had to build this yourselves, the training, the matching, the communications, manually and in-house, what would that actually take? Headcount, tools, etc.
No, it would not be happening.
Okay.
I think just the platform alone, the training, I think especially right, we're in the Northeast, to hire someone full time to build a platform and to run it and to do the training, it would be a full-time role, with benefits and fringe, and that would be well over, per year, well over what we pay per year. So the cost, is not, it doesn't really make sense. So that part is an easy decision, in my opinion, because it pays for itself, pretty easily with what our salary would be for another full-time position. Um, because we have to do very little of the time consuming things. Like right now we're in the process of mentor recruitment. We started in May. But they're just, it's almost August. They're coming around, they're checking their emails more. Just today, I got 3 emails from students saying, I'm interested in signing up to be a mentor. Can you talk to me a little bit about the time commitment? Because again,
Mm.
our students are busy, right? Like your students are too, right? They're working, they're involved, they're taking a full course load, right? They're hesitant to overcommit. So they want to make sure they have time in their weeks, in their day to day to do this. And I assure them that yes, I believe you can because you can work it around your schedule. They want to know if there are set meetings. I say there are not set meetings. You work it out with your mentee. So I think it's super helpful to have a platform that does the training, has, prompts the students with not only some questions to ask, but when to reach out, and then prompts them to, hey, did you talk to your mentor this week? Record it. Like what date and what was the subject about, right? So then that's how that data all gets tracked. We don't have to rely on them necessarily to be like, oh, let me go record that. They will get prompted. So then they just can click a few buttons and record their conversation.
It also sounds that it's not just running at scale for you, it's running at scale for the students as well. Like they're able to manage multiple conversations, and whereas an in-house program, you may be asking them to record one conversation a semester. They're able to really do that very easily, it sounds like.
Yes, very easily.
That's great. All right. We are going to talk a little bit more broadly here. We're going to talk we've talked a lot about program data already, but we all know maintaining momentum in higher ed is not just about the numbers. It is about navigating organizational change and onboarding new leaders. And so you all have done a lot of that in the last year. And so it would be really helpful to hear. As you've navigated all of this change, including new leadership within your college and at the institutional level, how have you managed to keep mentorship a priority amidst all of that transition? Leslie, do you want to start?
Sure. I think that just to go back a little bit, the wonderful thing about Mentor Collective, from my perspective, is the technology. The technology has advanced every year. The dashboard has kept pace with all the new ideas that you could think of. So it's not only helped the students as mentees and as mentors, but it's helped us as well. And it's cut down the amount of time that Courtney and I have spent. So since that beginning time 8 years ago, Courtney has become an assistant dean. I've become an associate dean. Um, we spend probably about 1/10 of the time that we spent the first year on this program. Um, but the difference is that we have consistency now in terms of what we do, and we have consistency in terms of the results. And we can share with new leadership every time that they ask about the program, what is the program doing? So we can say that we have between 4 and 10% on any given year of retention from first semester to second semester. We have retention, points every year of first year into second year. And as I said, that spillover is now occurring in the other dangerous area that we have, which is junior year to senior year, where we have a big drop off as well. So that has been advanced largely by the technology of the dashboard. We can identify students who have problems. We can address those problems at a more rapid pace, and we can help those students. The other thing is that we have a wonderful colleague at Mentor Collective, Javier. I have to give him a shout out, who
Mhm.
who helps us. And when he sees a problem, he contacts us as well. And so there are times when Javier will say, like, hey, there's something going on. You need to look at this student, or I'll share some information about the student that I've seen. And that helps us. And then we can also say to the upper administrators, this is great because you're not paying for this person, and this person is helping us as well. And so I think that that's where the difference is being made, is that the program has expanded. We've taken in more students. The course hasn't really gone up that much, and now we can take the whole freshman class. I know that's going to be a bigger jump, but we have much better service and it's more efficient. So I'll leave it there.
Leslie, you've said a lot, and it also seems like one of the things that you are saying is, we have access to the data and we can access it, we can use it, we can talk about it very easily. I'm curious, Courtney, if you have thoughts on like how has having access to this data helped you design and make decisions around your approach to mentorship?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty critical. And I think every new leader that comes in, rightfully so, says, yes, can I see the data? So qual quant data, very, very important, and digging in on certain cohorts. But I also think a big piece of it has been the culture, right? Doing something for 8 years, that's a long time, right? So it's a little hard to come in and say, oh, like we're just going to take something like that away when we can back it with the data. So I think and student, qual data as well, not just the quant, but I think having it such a part of our culture also really helps and is meaningful.
That's great. And I love the way that like the downstream effects, like it's not just for students, but also for staff, right? Being able to kind of see the trajectory on how it's changed the larger college landscape is really helpful. All right. So moving us forward, and you all have touched on this a little bit, but for leaders in our audience who are trying to build a similar case at their own institution or within their own college, what's the evidence or framing that's made the biggest difference in in your conversations with new leaders?
The data. I mean, I think that it's hard to get by that, I think. And I think this past year, working very closely with IR, to, really set up that dashboard, like as you mentioned, that we can then just go back and plug numbers into. I think that was critical, because it's not just a one-time thing. We can use it, in years to come as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's, like I said at the beginning, such a beauty of the way that you all went about it is really thinking about like how can we make something that'll stand the test of time, even as maybe new leaders come in. So we're going to wrap up our discussion and we're going to talk forward thinking and visioning for a second around what's next within the college. So you all have mentioned previously, we serve first year students, but there are gaps in other areas in the college, like juniors and likely with transfer students as well. So what is your strategic thinking around how you're thinking about what's next and who to serve? And how are you making that decision?
So
Sorry.
I think one year we decided to look at transfer students, um, but then we moved away from it. But I think that we need to reconsider that again because transfer students do feel lost, and there is a sense that transfer students do not get the full sense of belonging because they don't come in with the connections, and they are not coming in as usually freshmen or sophomores. Most of them are coming in as juniors.
Mhm.
Um, and this would help them. It puts them at a disadvantage if they don't have those connections that the freshmen and sophomores have. The other thing that we've talked about is expanding to the whole freshman class. Um, and I think that that's where we are going to move for the near future and then go to the transfers after that. But the key thing that I want to point out is that for most people, cost is the most important thing. If you can help 100 students, but you can also help 500 students for the same price, why not help 500 students? And so that is the thinking that I've used and that Courtney has used in order to sell the idea of expanding. So if we can have the same price, why not let's go bigger? It's not going to change any of the other dimensions, and we're still going to be just as effective.
I love that. And I love the emphasis on scale because you all are really thinking about scale. And so we'll move to the next slide, which is our last question. Before, if there's any Q&A, we're happy to take it. So this fall, and you've hinted at this a little bit, Courtney, you're deploying a brand new model of mentorship. You're offering it to all 850 incoming students within the college. That's a huge milestone. Congratulations. What would you say to a peer institution that might be hesitant to take the leap from pilot project to a mentorship for all model?
Yeah, so I think the fear is that, okay, if we do it for everyone, the data isn't going to look as good because some people will not engage, right? And right now we have, a targeted but opt-in program. So they don't have to sign up. We're not forcing them. We encourage them strongly to, but we don't make them, right? But for this year, if they don't sign up, they will be matched no matter what. However, we will be able to see who those people are. We will be able to see if they interact or not. And then once we have all the data going forward, we can adjust. So I think for us, it is the logical next step because I think we know that it works. It works for those that put in and engage, they will get something back. So that is what we're going to try to use and encourage the students that maybe didn't sign up but were matched and say, hey, this is why we matched you. This is what this person can do for you. Why not? Why not engage? Even if you engage 2 or 3 times a semester, 5 minutes. It's not a big time commitment. You might end up liking it. You might end up liking the person or getting some really valuable information. So we try to frame it as you have nothing to lose. Why not engage?
That's great. And I think it really goes back, Leslie, to your point of like, if we could serve 50 students for the same price, why not serve 500? And so really thinking about like, what do we have to lose by pairing students with a mentor on day one? Probably nothing. We're all going
Right.
to get a mentor, and that's going to be an inclusive part of the experience within your college. So I really love that. Leslie, I'm wondering if there's anything you would add in terms of kind of how you all have been thinking about this decision and how you're planning to weave it into the larger culture within the college.
I think that this is the evolution of where we were 8 years ago. Um, and I think that universities have to recognize that student success is a priority. How do you help your students? You have to give them the tools. And one of the tools is um, providing them with peers, peers who can be helpful. And I think that this is the best way that we could do this at Montclair State. I'm not sure that everyone will agree that this is the best way for them, but for us with limited resources, um, this is clearly the best way.
Yes, I agree. And I think like you all have really thought about, how do we use our resources to our greatest advantage? And I think that really has come across today in terms of like how do we build a culture that we really care about, that really is reflective of our values within the institution, and how do we do that in a resource constrained environment? And so really appreciate that. And you've seen great data. And so I just want to celebrate all of those things. Those are huge wins. We can't wait to see what's next. I'm really excited to see you all hit that 850 number later this summer and early this fall. But with that, I'm going to hand it back to Jen and to close us out.